بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. Eid al-Ghadeer is the most important occasion held on 18 Zil-Hijjah to celebrate the successorship of Imam Ali alayhi salam. On Allah's command, while returning from his farewell Hajj in 10 AH, Prophet Muhammad appointed Hazrat Ali ibn Abi Talib as his successor and the Imam after him in a place called Ghadeer Khum. Allah says in Surah Ma'idah, verse 67, Ya ayyuha ar-rasul balligh ma unzila ilayka min rabbik wa in lam taf'al fama ballaghta risalata wallahu ya'simuka minan nas innahu la yahdi al-qawm al-kafirin. O Messenger, deliver what has been revealed to you from your Lord. And if you do not, then you have not conveyed his message. And Allah will protect you from the people. Surely Allah does not guide those who reject faith. Prophet Muhammad raised Imam Ali's hand and said, Man kuntum mawlahu fahadha aliyun mawla. Whosoever I am the master, Ali is its master too. Allah completed our religion on this day. He says in Surah Ma'idah, verse 3, اليوم أكملت لكم دينكم وأتممت عليكم نعمتي ورضيت لكم إسلام دينا. Today I have perfected your religion for you, completed my favor upon you, and chosen for you Islam and religion. Salawat.
Would you like some water? أحسنتم جزاكم الله. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا والشفيع لذنوبنا وتبيب نفوسنا أبي القاسم محمد. اللهم صل على محمد. والصلاة والسلام على أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين إلى قيام يوم الدين. وفقنا الله وإياكم بعلم وعمل صالح إن شاء الله بذكر الصلاة على محمد وآل محمد. أما بعد، فقد قال الله عز وجل في كتابه الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا أيها الرسول بلغ ما أنزل إليك من ربك وإن لم تفعل فما بلغت رسالته والله يعصمك من الناس. آمنا بالله. صدق الله العلي العظيم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. Respected elders, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Eid Mubarak to each and every single one of you. May Allah accept your a'mal and your hajats on this auspicious day. May Allah forgive our sins as well. When we speak about Eid, we find that within our madhab there are 4 specific Eids that we celebrate. The first of them is Eid al-Fitr. And Eid al-Fitr is significant because it comes right after the month of Ramadan. 30 days of spiritual refinement we celebrate through Eid al-Fitr, where a human being then returns to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala after achieving absolute purification, absolvement of his sins, and he returns to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then you have Eid al-Adha, the Eid that we just went, that we passed by. The Eid when a person remembers Nabi Musa alayhi salam and his 40 days in the cave, when he sought refinement, when he sought meditation, and he communicated with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Likewise, Hajj. It is a significant a'mal within the religion of Islam where the human being goes through levels of purification. For those who have not been given the tawfiq to go for Hajj, are able to also seek spiritual purification from wherever they are. And then of course Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rejoices that moment through Eid al-Adha, where a person then sacrifices an animal in the honor of giving that to the poor, to the needy, to those who are from amongst the downtrodden. This enables the human being to establish the nature of being more giving in his life. This charitable nature is developed within his lifestyle. Then you have Fridays. Fridays is considered to be Eid. And we have this within the riwayat that every Friday is considered to be the day of Eid. Then you have what is known as Eid al-Ghadeer. Now amongst the riwayat of the Ahl al-Bayt, and of course this has been expounded by the ulama, this is known as Eid al-Akbar. Why is it known as Eid al-Akbar? The reason being is because when Imam Muhammad al-Baqir salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad, when he was asked with regards to this verse of Surah Al-Ma'idah, Ya ayyuhar rasul balligh ma unzila ilayk, what was this verse concerning? He says this verse is concerning al-wilaya. It is considered to be as Eid al-Ghadeer, is considered to be Eid al-Akbar, the greatest of all Eid. It is because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala confirms the religion of Islam, closes the religion of Islam through the wilaya of Ali ibn Abi Talib, salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi. Allahumma salli. And of course, this is also reinforced by the hadith of Imam Baqir alayhi salam, in which he says, Bunya al-Islam ala al-khamsa, that Islam is based, it's foundationed on 5 things: as-salah, as-sawm, az-zakat, al-hajj, and wilaya, wilaya of Ali alayhi salam. And then of course you have many different variations of this particular hadith. Now scholars came forward and they said, well, what does that mean? Does that mean that a person who does not believe in the wilaya of Ali alayhi salam, his a'mal are never accepted? Meaning, for example, our brothers from the Ahlul Sunnah, they pray, they fast, they go for Hajj. Does that mean that because they do not believe in the wilaya of Ali alayhi salam, Allah rejects their a'mal? No. It doesn't mean that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rejects their a'mal. And we have evidences this with regards to this within our own fiqh. It means that the higher levels of perfection of these a'mal cannot be accepted simply because they do not believe in the wilaya of Ali alayhi salam. Remember, our amal is based on our beliefs. If our beliefs are deficient, there's only so much our amal can carry us towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Let me give you an example. Within our fiqh, a question is raised when a person becomes a Muslim. All of his past sins, all of his past deeds are erased. It's as if this person has been born anew. What happens when a Sunni becomes a Shia? Let's say, for example, there's a Hanafi Muslim who converts and he becomes a Shi'i Muslim. Does that mean that because he's become a Shi'i Muslim, he has to perform the qada of all his prayers that has come before? The fuqaha come forward and say, no, there's no need for him to do that. They say, if a Hanafi Muslim Listen to this. They say if a Hanafi Muslim becomes a Shia, there is no need for him to repay all of his qada salah. Under one exception. If this Hanafi Muslim was irreligious before, there was a point in his life, let's say 5, 10, 20 years, he did not pray, he did not fast, and then he chose to come towards the religion of Shia Islam, then he has to perform qada of everything that he's missed out of his irreligiosity. But if this Hanafi Muslim performed salah based on the madhab of the Hanafi, and he carried on doing so until he became a Shia, then there's no reason for him, there's no point for him, or there is no need for him to repay all of his qada. He must only perform qada if he, out of his irreligiosity, missed his prayers. This tells us that the a'mal of our Sunni brothers are accepted. But the higher levels of these a'mal, the higher levels of spirituality of these a'mal cannot be accepted. Why? Because of their rejection of the wilayah of Ali alayhi salam. So when the Imam alayhi salam says, Bunya al-Islam al-khamsa, that Islam is built on 5, and the 5th of them is wilayah, it means that the higher levels of perfection from all of the different acts of ibadat cannot be attained except through the belief of Ali alayhi salam. Now based on this, you find that when we come to the examination of this particular verse, they say that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, towards the final years of the Prophet's life, began to slowly reveal to him that his time will now come to an end. So historical sources tell us that the Holy Prophet goes towards Hajj. When he goes towards Hajj, very interestingly, there are many sermons of the Holy Prophet, especially in this holy season of Hajj. Every maqam, he stops and he delivers a sermon. Some are lengthy, some are short, some are advices, some are spiritual advices, and so on and so forth. For example, on the day of Arafah, the Holy Prophet of Islam gives a lengthy sermon. And in this sermon, he speaks to the people and he reminds them of who they were in the time of Jahiliyyah. He reminds them of their actions in the time of Jahiliyyah. And then he talks about how Islam came and destroyed all of the remnants of Jahiliyyah. And then, of course, there are other sermons in other maqam. But the point is that the Holy Prophet, because it was the final years of his life or the final months of his life, he began excessively warning the people. At times, for example, he would speak about the wilayah of Ali alayhi salam. He would speak about the fada'il of the Imam alayhi salam. But never did he specifically appoint him as a successor. That's a key point here. The Prophet would enlighten the people, explain to the people that Ali is the most knowledgeable, that Ali is the most brave, that Ali, for example, is a scholar, that Ali is this, Ali is that, alayhi salam. But never did he exclusively point towards Ali alayhi salam and appoint him as a leader after him. So as the Prophet was now leaving Mecca to go towards Medina, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reveals to him when he reaches this place known as Ghadeer. Ghadeer, they say it was a place full of water, abundance of water. Now in those days, people of Arabia living in the desert, they would only travel where there is water. So they would pick routes where they would find water very easily. They would rest there for a day or so and then they would move on in their travels. Ghadeer was famous for its abundance of water. So when the Prophet reaches Ghadeer, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reveals the verse, Ya ayyuhar rasul, balligh ma unzila ilayk. O Prophet, reveal to the people, communicate to the people of what has been revealed to you. Now there's a different narration, and this narration is found within our books and within the books of our Sunni brothers as well. They say that it wasn't revealed, this verse, Ya ayyuhar rasul, balligh ma unzila ilayk, was not revealed on the day of Ghadeer, on the 18th of Dhul Hijjah. Rather, it was revealed on the day of Arafah. So, for example, there's a hadith of Imam Sadiq alayhi salatu wassalam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. On the day of Arafah, when the Prophet delivered his sermon, Jibreel descended and came towards the Prophet and he said, Ya Rasulullah, Allah yakra'uka salam. Allah conveys his peace and blessings upon you. O Prophet, deliver to the people. Tell the people that the Islam has been finalized. The religion of Islam has been completed. After this day, or before this time, Salah has been determined, Hajj has been determined, fasting has been determined, Zakat has been determined. And now on this day, what has been determined is the wilayah of Ali alayhi salam. So you have, for example, this is another variation of how Islam is built on these 5. This is the conveyance of Jibreel alayhi salam towards the Prophet of Islam. Now a question arises amongst the ulama. They say, look, we've got 2 versions. We've got one version that says that this verse was revealed on the day of Ghadeer. But then we have another narration that says that this verse was revealed on Arafah. So which one is true and which one is false? Amongst the scholars, for example, Ayatollah Muhammad Ray Shahri, he comes forward and he says we can join these two ahadith. There's no problem. There's no contradiction between these two ahadith. How do you join these two ahadith? They say when the Prophet was in Arafah, the verse was revealed. Ya ayyuhar rasul, balligh ma unzila ilayk. Reveal and communicate to the people what has been revealed unto you. Then the Prophet delays this. He delays this for about 9 days. He's thinking about a strategy of how to convey the message. 9 days later, on the 18th of Dhul Hijjah, on the day of Ghadeer, in Ghadeer, he then delivers the sermon, a lengthy sermon, and he exposes what his intentions are, and he appoints Imam Ali alayhi salam as the new successor. So, Muhammad Ray Shahri Ayatollah comes forward and he joins these two ahadith. Now the discussion carries on. They say that the Prophet in Ghadeer made sure that everyone were there, and those who had advanced to their own routes, he made sure that they were all called back, and they all came back to Ghadeer to listen to the announcement of the Holy Prophet of Islam. So the Prophet makes an announcement. Come back and listen to this particular announcement. So they all came back, they all congregated, 100,000 members. Some say 120,000. They all congregated in this place called Ghadeer. The time that was chosen by the Prophet to deliver the sermon was significant. It wasn't after sunset, when the sun had cooled, when the sun had gone, for example, the earth had cooled down. No, it was midday, the heat of the sun. And the Arabian heat is very excruciating. In the midst of the heat of the sun, the Prophet then delivers a lengthy sermon. A lengthy sermon. So in times of zaman, place, the Prophet is very meticulous in what time he chooses to deliver the sermon. The place as well is meticulously chosen, Ghadeer. And of course, the length of the sermon. It's a lengthy sermon. But the peak of this sermon is what we all know of, when the Prophet of Islam begins to mention, Man kuntum mawlahu fahada aliyun mawla. This is the peak, the climax of this sermon. Now this verse, very interestingly, let's dissect the verse and see how significant the verse is alone when it comes to the examination of Ghadeer. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Ya ayyuhar rasul, balligh ma unzila ilayk. Reveal unto the people, communicate to the people what has been revealed unto you. Here they say that the Prophet, there was a sense of fear in his heart. There was a sense of anxiety, not to the extent that he was scared extremely, but there was a sense of fear in his heart. So he was a bit reluctant as to how to communicate this particular message. Is this the fear that you and I have when we fear for our lives? What was Rasulullah fearful for? Was he fearful that the mushrikeens would come and take him? Was he fearful that the Jews would come and attack him and torture him and persecute him? When we fear for our lives. Did the Prophet of Islam fear communicating this message the way you and I fear for our lives? Say no. Rasulullah feared, the fear of Rasulullah was of a different nature altogether. It wasn't the fear that you and I have when we fear for our lives. The Prophet of Islam feared that the Muslims, if he was to convey this message, the Muslims will not take it with importance, and there will be severe ramifications to Ali alayhi salam. Likewise, the Prophet realizes and understands that if he does not convey this message, his message will be rendered useless. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَإِن لَمْ تَفْعَلْ فَمَا بَلَّغْتَ رِسَالَتَهُ. If you do not convey this message, if you do not communicate this message, it is as if you have not delivered the message of Islam. 23 years of exhaustion, 23 years of effort will be rendered useless. The fear was a legitimate fear, because we find in the sunnah of civilization that have come before Rasulullah, they all followed the same path. You find, for example, when you came to the civilization of Nabi Musa alayhi salam, Musa came with his sharia, he came with his divine message, but when he left this world, people concocted his message. They distorted his message. Likewise, the Christians, Nabi Isa alayhi salam came towards their people, they accepted his message, but then when he left his people, they distorted his message. Likewise, the Prophet of Islam knew that if he was not to make his message clear, his message to his people on Eid al-Ghadeer, on the day of Ghadeer, then the people would turn away from the religion of Islam. Someone may come forward and say, but Allah protects the Quran. The Quran is significant, isn't it? The Quran is significant. Allah protects the Quran. Sahih. But the interpretation of the Quran, under whose hands does it come under? That is a significant point as well, because there are certain characters in history that took on the responsibility of performing the tafsir of the Holy Quran, and there's a whole mess of different traditions that we have within our books and within the books of our Sunni brothers as well. So you find here the Prophet knew that if he was not to convey this message clearly, the people would move away from the religion of Islam the way they had done so at the time of Musa and Isa alayhi salam. Let me give you an example. Today, as Muslims, we believe in Tawheed. If a person was to come and say, you as a Muslim, you believe in Tawheed? Yes, we believe in Tawheed. It's like, where in the Quran is the verses of Tawheed? Well, the Quran is full of Tawheed. It's very easy for us to pick up a verse from the Quran to prove Tawheed. If you ask the same question to the Christians, it's not so easy for them. They believe in the Trinity. But when you tell them where in the Bible does God talk about the Trinity, it's not something easy for them to pick out. Why? Because Trinity was one of the concoction of St. Paul. St. Paul, many centuries later, introduced the whole concept of Trinity. So here, the Prophet feared that the message of Islam would be distorted. So 120,000 people gathered in Ghadeer, and he delivers a lengthy sermon. Amongst the sermon, he then conveys the message very clearly, Man kuntum mawlahu fahada aliyun mawla. Now we come to the second area of our discussion. This hadith al-Ghadeer, is one of the most significant ahadith that we can use to prove the wilayah and the successorship of Ali alayhi salam. But at the same time, when you refer to the books of our Sunni scholars and our Sunni brothers, you realize that the event of Ghadeer is widely accepted. Even then, you find that there are three reactions from amongst the Sunnis when it comes to Ghadeer. The first reaction from amongst the Sunnis is that they don't even recognize Ghadeer. Some consider it to be a fabrication. Some consider it to be a completely different point in history. Let me give you an example. The verse that we spoke of, Ya ayyuhar rasul balligh ma unzila ilayk, within our sources, within certain Sunni sources, they say this was revealed on the 18th of Dhul Hijjah. But amongst the other scholars, you find, for example, Muhammad ibn Idris al-Shafi'i. He comes forward and he says, no, this verse was revealed right in the beginning, right in the first years of Bi'tha. The first ayat of the Holy Quran that was revealed to the Prophet was what? Iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq. The verses after it was, Ya ayyuhar rasul balligh ma unzila ilayk. Why? He comes forward and he says, look, the Prophet of Islam was made a prophet. When he was made a prophet, he knew that his people would reprimand him, would rebuke him, there would be severe ramifications. So he was scared. He was fearful for his life as to how he would then present the message of Islam. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells him, do not be scared. Allahu ya'asimuka minan nas. Allah will protect you from the people. You do your duty. Go and deliver. Perform the tabligh of the religion of Islam. So the Prophet of Islam is reinforced by the message of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Our response to the opinions of a Shafi'i, we say that no. Number one, the Mufassirin unanimously agree that this verse of the Holy Quran was one of the final verses to be revealed. For him to then associate it to the first verses of the Holy Quran is something illegitimate and it's not authentic at all. Amongst other scholars, they came forward and they said that this verse, Ya ayyuhar rasul balligh ma unzila ilayk, was revealed on behalf of Abu Talib. In which way? They say in the beginning of Islam, Abu Talib used to extensively support Rasulullah. A person who was willing to give his own life, who was willing to sacrifice his sons to protect the message of Rasulullah, he dies as a mushrik. But a person who opposes the Prophet of Islam for the entire lifespan of the tabligh of Rasulullah, converts towards the religion of Islam out of force, dies as a mu'min, the likes of Abu Sufyan. Very interesting how history concocts two completely different personalities. They say that Abu Talib used to extensively support the Holy Prophet of Islam. The protection was great in the hands of Abu Talib. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reveals to the Prophet, Ya ayyuhar rasul balligh ma unzila ilayk. Reveal to the people the message of Islam. Allahu ya'asimuka minan nas. Allah will protect you from the people. Don't seek the protection of Abu Talib. Allah will protect you. So you found that certain Sunni scholars appreciated this particular opinion. Leave Abu Talib, leave him with his shirk. We will protect you when you deliver the message of Islam. Others came forward and said, no, this verse was revealed Because the Prophet hid some verses from the Quran from the people. Because of the fear in his heart, the Prophet would convey some revelation, but then he would hide some revelation because of how strong it was against the mushrikeen. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then says, reveal all of it to the people. Don't be scared, we will protect you. So this was the third opinion. Amongst the fourth opinion, Fakhruddin al-Razi, for example, mentions 10 opinions at least. 10 opinions as to why this verse was revealed. And the whole point behind this is to show you that it's not as simple for us to say that this verse was revealed in Ghadeer, because their sources tell them otherwise. Their sources tell them that it's got nothing to do with Ghadeer. So the first group from amongst the Sunni ulama did not even accept that this verse was revealed in Ghadeer. The second amongst the ulama came forward and said, no, yes, it was revealed in Ghadeer. And yes, the Prophet did give a lengthy sermon on Ghadeer. And yes, the Prophet did say, Man kuntum mawla fahada aliyun mawla, but the word mawla does not mean master the way you Shia interpret it to be. In fact, the word mawla means friend. What's interesting is today, when you speak with the Ahlus Sunnah, most of them, you would be surprised, they don't know anything about Ghadeer and what transpired in Ghadeer. There are reports from our scholars in Qom when they discuss Ghadeer with scholars from Al-Azhar University. Those who have trained in the religion of Islam have not heard anything about Ghadeer. So you find that there is a movement where this whole incident has been brushed aside. So the second group of scholars say, yes, the Ghadeer did take place, but the actual sermon and certain words of this sermon are interpreted differently. And then you had, for example, the third opinion amongst the ulama. The third opinion, they said that yes, Ghadeer did take place. Yes, the Prophet did mention the authority of Ali alayhi salam, but unfortunately that authority does not extend in political areas. Yes, Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam was the most knowledgeable, and yes, you should refer to him when it comes to tafsir, when it comes to ahadith, when it comes to fiqh, but not in political areas. Political area, that was in the hands of the likes of Abu Bakr and Umar and the ones that came after him as well. What's our response to this? One response, and I will end the majlis inshallah. And that is the response of Imam al-Qadim alayhi salam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. It's surprising how our seventh Imam, when he begins to speak about Ghadeer, he begins to speak about the intricate details of what transpired on that day. Imam al-Qadim alayhi salam, in his time was considered to be a'lam. He was considered to be the most knowledgeable scholar of his time. And this is of course ascertained and proven by our brothers as well, within their books of history, that there was no one like the likes of Qadim in his time. Imam Qadim alayhi salam comes forward and he says that on the day of Ghadeer was a place which was ma'rufa wal mashhura. It was famous for its area, the area that it was located in. Rasulullah turns to the people, stands on the minbar, and he says, Qala ya ibadallah, unsubuni. He says, O people, what is my lineage? فقالوا, the people replied, Anta Muhammad ibn Abdullah, Ibn Abdul Muttalib, Ibn Hashim, Ibn Abdul Manaf. They began mentioning the lineage of the Prophet of Islam. Then the Prophet says, Ya ayyuhan nas, alastu awla bikum minkum bi anfusikum. Am I not greater than you are over yourselves? Do I not have high authority over you in your lives than you have over yourselves? An-nabi awla bil mu'minin min anfusihim. They all came forward and they categorically said, Bala ya Rasulallah. And then he says, فَأَنَا مَوْلَاكُمْ أَوْلَى بِكُمْ مِنْ أَنفُسِكُمْ. They said, Bala ya Rasulallah. He says, فَنَظَرَ إِلَى السَّمَاءِ. Then he looked towards the skies. وَقَالَ اللَّهُمَّ إِشْهَدْ يَقُولُ هُوَ ذَلِكَ. He says, Allahumma ishhad, Ya Allah, witness this. And he says this 3 times. When he says this 3 times, the people repeat it as well. When they repeat this 3 times, then he turns towards Ali alayhi salam. He says, Ala man kuntu mawlahu fa'awla bihi fahadha mawlahu wa awla bih. He turns to the Imam alayhi salam and he inaugurates him as the Imam after him, as his wasi. And then he says, Allahumma wali man wala. وَآدِ مَنْ عَادَاهُ. And the one who befriends him has friended Allah, and the one who has made an enemy of him has made an enemy of Allah. And then he says, وَانْصُرْهُمْ مَنْ نَصَرَ. And the one who helps him has helped Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَخْذُلْ مَنْ خَذَلَ. ثُمَّ قَالْ قُمْ يَا أَبَا بَكْرٍ. He says, O Abu Bakr, stand. فَبَايَعْ لَهُ بِإِمْرَةِ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ. Go and consider him as Amir al-Mu'mineen. فَقَامَ فَفَعَلَ ذَلِكَ. He stood, he went towards the Imam alayhi salam, وَبَايَعْ لَهُ, and he gave his allegiance to the Imam. ثُمَّ قَالَ قُمْ يَا عُمَرَ. Umar, stand, go towards Ali and give allegiance to him. Consider him as Amir al-Mu'mineen. Umar then stands and he performs that which was ordered to him by the Prophet of Islam. After Umar, قال بعد ذلك لتمام التسعة. The Imam alayhi salam says, then the Prophet turned to 9 from amongst them and he said, go and give your bay'ah towards Ali alayhi salam. Who were these 9? The Imam doesn't mention. But the ulama came forward and they said they were asas al-fitna. They are the ones who caused fitna later on. The Prophet picked them one by one and said to them, go and give your bay'ah to Ali alayhi salam. When they gave their bay'ah to the Imam alayhi salam, ثُمَّ لِرُؤَسَاءِ الْمُحَاجِرِينَ وَالْأَنصَارِ. He then turned towards the tribal leaders of the Muhajirin and the Ansar and he said, go and give your bay'ah to Ali alayhi salam. فَبَايَعُ كُلُّهُمْ فَقَامَ مِنْ بَيْنِ جَمَاعَتِهِمْ. Then one person stood out from amongst the jama'ah, from amongst the congregation. Who? Umar ibn al-Khattab. وَقَالَ بَخٍ لَكَ يَا ابْنَ أَبِي طَالِبٍ. He said, congratulations, O son of Abu Talib. أَصْبَحْتَ مَوْلَايَ. You have now become my Mawla. وَمَوْلَى كُلِّ مُؤْمِنٍ وَمُؤْمِنَةٍ. And the master of every mu'minah and mu'minatin, and every mu'minah. ثُمَّ تَفَرَّقُوا عَنْ ذَلِكَ. And then they departed and they took their own routes to go back home. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on this auspicious day, on the day of Eid al-Ghadeer, Eid al-Akbar, to accept our a'mal, to accept our hajat. Ya Allah, in regards to our mu'mineen, forgive their sins and allow them to raise or be raised alongside the Ahl al-Bayt alayhim as-salam. Ya Allah, hasten the reappearance of the Imam of our time. Ajjalallahu ta'ala farajahu al-sharif. Wa akhira da'wana anna alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Wa sallallahu ala Muhammad wa alihi tayyibin at-tahirin.
सफर तवील है, राहे निजात छोटी है, बहुत है जिक्रे अली और हयात छोटी है। अली को कैसे मैं मौलाए कायनात कहूँ, बड़ा है नामे अली कायनात छोटी है। अली बड़ा है नामे अली कायनात छोटी है। सलावत। नाद अली का विर्द जो करती चली गई, उम्र रवा सुकून से गुजरती चली गई। और जिसने दरे हुसैन पे सर को झुका दिया, वो शख्सियत जहां में उभरती चली गई। मैदान में तेज दस्तिए तेगे अली न पूछ, सर से चली बदन में उतरती चली गई। दीवानवार लोग भी मरते चले गए, तेरे ली जिधर से गुजरती चली गई। या अली मरहब हवा में उछला जो खाकर अली की जर, हाथों से तेग पैरों से धरती चली गई। दुनिया से जिक्र आले मोहम्मद न रुक सका, दुनिया ये आरज़ू लिए मरती चली गई। मौत आ रही थी देखा जो लब पर अली का नाम, मुझसे मिले बगैर गुजरती चली गई। या फौजे अदू पे डाल के एक सरसरी निगाह, सर को उड़ा के सर से गुजरती चली गई। गौहर लहद में पहुंचा तो अश्के अज़लिए, एक रोशनी लहद में बिखरती चली गई। और जिसने दरे हुसैन पे सर को झुका दिया, वो शख्सियत जहां में उभरती चली गई। सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम।
चार मिसरात की तारीख के हवाले से समाप्त फरमाएं। खुदा परस्त वफाए अमीर याद रहे, खुदा परस्त वफाए अमीर याद रहे। और ज़माने भर को नबी का वजीर याद रहे। और बनाया जाता है मस्जिद में इसलिए मिंबर, बनाया जाता है मस्जिद में इसलिए मिंबर। अरे नमाजियों को भी ईद गदीर याद रहे। नमाजियों को भी ईद गदीर याद रहे। और एक मतला और दो शेर और समझ जब नबी का फिला रोक कर खुम में सबको बुलाने लगे। जब नबी का फिला रोक कर खुम में सबको बुलाने लगे। जब नबी का काफिला रोक कर खुम में सबको बुलाने लगे तो कुछ सहाबी हुए गमज़दा, मुर्तज़ा मुस्कुराने लगे। कुछ सहाबी हुए गमज़दा, मुर्तज़ा मुस्कुराने लगे। और तवज्जो चाहूंगा कि जब कजावों का मिंबर बना तंग दिल सर खुजाने लगे। जब कजावों का मिंबर बना तंग दिल सर खुजाने लगे तो भाग कर अब कहाँ जाओगे, भाग कर अब कहाँ जाओगे। ऊंट भी मुंह चुराने लगे। भाग कर यारी तो जब मदीने में पूछा गया, तवज्जो चाहूंगा इस शेर पर कि जब मदीने में पूछा गया देर क्यों लग गई क्या हुआ। जब मदीने में पूछा गया देर क्यों लग गई क्या हुआ तो वाक़या खुम का जल जल के सब, वाक़या खुम का जल जल के सब घर में सच सच बताने लगे। एक मतलब और 3 शेर और समाज फरमा कि राज हम पर खुला गदीर से है, राज हम पर खुला गदीर से है और सारा दीने खुदा गदीर से है। और वो अली को तो मानते हैं मगर अरे वो अली को तो मानते हैं मगर बस उन्हें मसअला गदीर से है। बस उन्हें मसे अला गदीर से है, और राबता खुद करेगा उससे खुदा, राबता खुद करेगा उसी से खुदा। अरे घर तेरा राबता गदीर से है, घर तेरा राबता गदीर से है। और फतेह खैबर के माल से उल्फती, फतेह खैबर के माल से उल्फते शेख जी को गिला गदीर से है, शेख जी को गिला गदीर से है। अली मौला, अली मौला। और आखिरी शेर के कुछ नहीं दीन करे बला के बगैर, कुछ नहीं दीन करे बला के बगैर, और खुद कर बला गदीर से है, राज हम पर खुला गदीर से है। सलवात बर मोहम्मद।
बर मोहम्मद वाले मोहम्मद सल्लल्लाहु। आज के इस मुबारक जश्न की मुबारकबाद पेश करता हूँ और अपने वक्त के इमाम की खिदमत में एक बुलंद तरीन सलवात से मुबारकबाद पेश कर भी। चार मिसरे से आगाज़ करता हूँ कि मोमिनों हंसने हंसाने की रात आई है, मोमिनों हंसने हंसाने की रात आई है, अली का जश्न मनाने की रात आई है, अली का जश्न मनाने की रात आई है। जलाओ जितना जला सकते हो चिरागों को, जलाओ जितना जला सकते हो चिरागों को, मुनाफिकों को जलाने की रात आई है, मुनाफिकों को जलाने की रात आई है। ये कौले सादिक है मुस्तफा का, तवज्जो चाहता हूं, ये कौले सादिक है मुस्तफा का कि इसमें जाए सुखन नहीं है, कि इसमें जाए सुखन नहीं है। सनाए हैदर न हो जहां पर, सनाए हैदर न हो जहां पर, वो अंजुमन अंजुमन नहीं है, वो अंजुमन अंजुमन नहीं है। तवज्जो चाहता हूं कि हमारी महफिलों में यारो, हमारी महफिलों में यारो, बिला झिझक आओ के यहां पर, हमारी महफिलों में यारो, बिला झिझक आओ के यारो। गदीर जैसी खुली फिजा है, गदीर जैसी खुली फिजा है, सकीफा जैसी घुटन नहीं है, गदीर जैसी खुली फिजा है, सकीफा जैसी घुटन नहीं है। यह खुशबू और यह साया बोलता है, यह खुशबू और यह साया बोलता है। अली गुजरे है रास्ता बोलता है, अली गुजरे है रास्ता बोलता है। यह मिंबर है सलूनी का यहां से, यह मिंबर है सलूनी का यहां से। गदीर खुम का मौला बोलता है, गदीर खुम का मौला बोलता है। और मेरे अशआर कंबर सुनते हैं, मेरे अशार कंबर सूंघते हैं, समंदर चुप है कतरा बोलता है। समंदर चुप है कतरा बोलता है, तो मेरी गोयाई पर हैरत न कीजिए, मेरी गोयाई पर हैरत न कीजिए। अली चाहे तो मुर्दा बोलता है, अली चाहे तो मुर्दा बोलता है। और कभी सुनिए बिलाले काज़मी को, कभी सुनिए बिलाले काज़मी को, अली के हक में बंदा बोलता है, अली के हक में बंदा बोलता है। तो देता हूं एक मतलब और दो से एक। लौट रहे हज से पैगंबर, लौट रहे हैं हज से पैगंबर, रहमत आगे आगे है। लौट रहे हैं हज से पैगंबर, रहमत आगे आगे है। करना है ऐलान विलायत, आयत आगे आगे है। करना है ऐलान विलायत, आयत आगे आगे है। और मुनकिर हैदर की सूरत को देख के ऐसा लगता है, मुनकिर हैदर की सूरत को देख के ऐसा लगता है, सूरत पीछे पीछे है और लानत आगे आगे है। सूरत पीछे पीछे है और लानत आगे। तो जेता हूं इस शेर पे, क्या मुनकिर हैदर की सूरत को देख के ऐसा लगता है, सूरत पीछे पीछे है और लानत आगे आगे है। तारीख इस्लाम में हमको, तारीख इस्लाम में हमको एक लड़ाई ऐसी मिली। तवज्जो चाहता हूं दूसरे मिसरे पे। तारीख इस्लाम में हमको एक लड़ाई ऐसी मिली, दुनिया भर के मर्द है पीछे, औरत आगे आगे है। दुनिया भर के मर्द है पीछे, औरत आगे आगे है। एक मरतबा सलवात भेजिए मोहम्मद वाले मोहम्मद पर। या लिया जिसके सीने में खुदा इसके पैगंबर रख दे, जिसके सीने में खुदा इसके पैगंबर रख दे, वो अगर चाहे तो कूजे में समंदर रख दे, वो अगर चाहे तो कूजे में समंदर रख दे। और देखना चाहे अगर कोई गदीरी मंजर, देखना चाहे अगर कोई गदीरी मंजर, सिर्फ कुरान को कुरान के ऊपर रख दे। देखना चाहे अगर कोई गदीरी मंजर, सिर्फ कुरान को कुरान के ऊपर रख दे। खुदा कहता है, आए बल्ली के मैं तर्जुमा करना चाहता हूं, खुद बने मौला अगर तो मुर्तजा को छोड़ दे, खुद बने मौला अगर तो मुर्तजा को छोड़ दे, खुद बनाया है अगर तो मुस्तफा को छोड़ दे। हुक्म ताकीदी खुदा का था, नबी का था अमल। हुक्म ताकीदी नबी का खुदा का था, नबी का था अमल। मान ले मौला अली को या खुदा को छोड़ दे, मान ले मौला अली को या खुदा को छोड़ दे। नमाजो रोज़ो हज्जो ज़कात खुम्सो जिहाद, नमाजो रोज़ो हज्जो ज़कात खुम्सो जिहाद, ये सब पहुंच गए। सबके वली की बात करो, खुदा कहता है नमाजो रोज़ो हज्जो ज़कात खुम्सो जिहाद, ये सब पहुंच गए। सबके वली की बात करो। कहा रसूल से ये जिब्राइल ने आकर, कहा रसूल से ये जिब्राइल ने आकर, अली का हुक्म है बस अब अली की बात करो, अली का हुक्म है बस अब अली की बात करो। कहते 1400 साल हो गए हमें गदीर याद नहीं है, 1400 साल हो गए हमें गदीर का वाकया मालूम नहीं है। तो किया था ऐद विलायत अली से तूने कहीं, किया था ऐद विलायत अली से तूने कहीं, उसे तुम्हारे कबीरो सगीर भूल गए। अरे ये 30 पारों का कुरान तो हिफ्ज कर डाला, ये 4 हरफों का लफ्ज़ गदीर भूल गए। ये 30 पारों का कुरान तो अब हिफ्ज कर डाला, ये 4 हरफों का लफ्ज़ गदीर भूल गए। बहुत अजीम बहुत बेहतरीन काम हुआ, बहुत अजीम बहुत बेहतरीन काम हुआ। खुदा का दीन अली मुर्तज़ा के नाम हुआ। सरों पे शम्स गरम रेत दिल में बुग़्ज़े अली। सरों पे शम्स गरम रेत दिल में बुग़्ज़े अली, कहां कहां से जलाने का इंतजाम हुआ। सरों पे शम्स गरम रेत दिल में बुग़्ज़े अली, कहां कहां से जलाने का इंतजाम हुआ। कहां कहां से जलाने का इंतजाम हुआ। कहां कहां से जलाने का इंतजाम हुआ। मौला अली वली की विलायत को बांटकर, मौला अली वली की विलायत को बांटकर मुझ पर मेरे रसूल ने एहसान कर दिया। और मुश्किल बहुत था फर्क हराम और हलाल का, यह काम भी गदीर ने आसान कर दिया। यह काम भी गदीर ने आसान कर दिया। आखिरी 4 मिसरे तवज्जो चाहता हूं। अपने ईमान की दौलत को बचा कर रखना, मशवरा है ये। अपने ईमान की दौलत को बचा कर रखना, जिंदगी भर जो कमाया है कभी मत देना। अपने ईमान की दौलत को बचा कर रखना, जिंदगी भर जो कमाया है कभी मत देना। जान दे देना अगर जान भी मांगे दुनिया। तवज्जो चाहता हूं 4 मिसरे पे। जान दे देना अगर जान भी मांगे दुनिया, तुमसे बस इतनी गुजारिश है अली मत देना। जान भी मांगे जो दुनिया, अपने ईमान की दौलत को बचा कर रखना, जिंदगी भर जो कमाया है कभी मत देना। जान दे देना अगर जान भी मांगे दुनिया, तुमसे बस इतनी गुजारिश है अली मत देना। अस्सलाम।